and give them the dignity that they deserve, a dignity of having a clean home with no lead, a dignity of having an ability to have a small business, a dignity to have the best education. If we don't have that, if we can't do that, then what are we really doing? If we can't fight for them, then who are we really fighting for?
We're here today with Marjorie Velazquez, the Democratic District Leader of the 82nd Assembly District, Part B, the Municipal Services Chair of Bronx Community Board 10, and a candidate for New York City's 13th Councilmatic District in the Bronx. Personally, how has it been going for you since the pandemic started?
Oh, for me, I have several coping mechanisms, right? Acts of service is my love language, right? And I think it's very much so for so many people that have seen me, right? I found myself trying to get out there and doing busy work, right? Why? Because I want, in the end, at the end of the day, it's if not now, when? If not me, then who? Those were the questions I kept on asking myself. And it was about joining up with folks and healing that way, right? That was my healing. That was my love language. That is who I am. And it was establishing weekly food distributions, right? So beyond, so it started off as mutual aid, and then it went and expanded to food distribution, to like setting up pantries, right? It's an evolution, if you will. And for me, yeah, it is a coping mechanism, right? Along with like finding ways to cook, right? Or finding new like recipes that my grandmother made, or like Jeff's grandparents made, where you just want to make sure that there's a way that you combine it, and you also help your partner heal during these tougher times. Look, my husband had COVID when it first started, and we weren't aware of it because it was like one of those times where the test wasn't out. We were still learning about the symptoms, but we knew it was like a flu. And Jeff had the longest flu I've ever seen. It was just like it debilitated him in a way that it just didn't make sense to me. And when we did our antibodies test, that's when Jeff realized that he did, in fact, have it. I fortunately have yet to have it, even if living with Jeff. And it's just, that's what's so random about this. I don't know why I haven't gotten it. It's just weird. And just, that's another thing, right? And when we're talking about mental health, it's just why him and not me, and dealing with that, right? Where in my family, my mom's cousin ended up passing because of COVID. And it was tough. That's the biggest hit for us as a family, and seeing how that played out, and just being careful with my parents, right? It was having that conversation with them, and kind of it's weird to tell an adult of their age and be like, no, you got to stay home. You got to sit down. If you need compras or anything, like, no, this is why you have us, right? We're your kids, and this is our responsibility. And so it was that too. Certainly now, also, when we're talking about mental health, we also need to talk about our first responders, right? And how they ended up healing, because that's one of the biggest issues that I have when it comes to COVID recovery. There's not enough conversations about mental health and funding for mental health for our frontline workers, right? Those that worked in the hospitals, those that, and like, even, sorry, my cat's here. Like from custodian levels up throughout the hospital, right? Everything that they've seen, the fear of walking in through those doors is real. And we need to address that throughout all the essential workers, because it's going to require a lot of healing.
You've worked on campaigns before. You ran yourself a few years ago. And this is such a different animal now, running for office during a pandemic. What are some of like what like how has that dynamic changed the way you run for office?
So we announced back in August of 2020. It does change, right? The way you meet people, their needs as well are different. But what's not different is my community's ability to be there for each other, my community's grit, and the way that they can hustle together, right? It's about making sure that we're keeping our families here. We don't want them to leave us, right? And the best example of that was this terrible fire affected 4 homes in the district. It's like around the holidays, and literally the community board set up. So I went there 6 in the morning. It was terrible. What was the most beautiful thing? Neighbors, the PTA, everyone literally showing up. What do you need? Here's some compras, here's food, organizing that. How could we like help you with the finding of an apartment, a temporary shelter? What do you need? What do you need? What do you need? And I organized a clothing drive in the community board. The response was ridiculous. So beautiful. And that's what my community is, right? And to see that, right, is what's important to see of the solidarity that my community has with each other, right? What we're looking at when approaching folks, one, you're right. I did run before, and people remember, right? Because we came across and we ran against someone who spent the most in the history of city council races. And then we also are still around, right? It speaks to why you run. If you're running for ego and name recognition, it's one thing. If you're running for your community, then you best to stay there. You best to organize, and you best to do stuff with your communities, so that way they remember, right? And that's what we did. We knew that our voices still needed to be heard. We knew that folks needed to be at the table still. And it was keeping up. And it's been beautiful to support, and knowing that folks still know us and want to be part of it, and believe in us. And ultimately, my life's mission, especially for my community, is the belief in themselves, right? Because if you have folks who believe in themselves, and they do good for them, and they do good for others. And that's what we need more of. We need a morale booster, because COVID has knocked us down, but we're going to pick ourselves up, and it's one day at a time.
So how does COVID affect the day by day operations of running a campaign?
Tons of Zooms. That's different, right? For us, the outreach, right? Phone banking, over door knocking, also in the order that you do it. When we ran last time, we did do phone banking, not as aggressively. This time around, it's a little bit different, right? It's phone banking first. And there are still folks who do want you to stop by. So it's also like creating a concrete like etiquette, also like taking into account like face shields 6 feet apart, providing them with hand sanitizer. I always did that though. I always had hand sanitizers back even when we did 2017, just because you meet so many people, you just can't afford to get sick, right? I didn't want my team to get sick and cold spread and things like that. So that was consistent, but more so now the face shield, making sure that people feel safe and comfortable. when someone knocks on your door is also very, very crucial. And also what people ask for, right? When you have the conversation on the phone, hey, is it okay? Do you need help? And if they do, then you show up and you give them a heads up that we're going to stop by too. So it's more communication in that level.
People running for office, they've kind of sort of are utilizing their campaigns as a sort of like de facto volunteer effort to help combat COVID, right? And everything that comes with it. So you talked about what you've been doing. So what are the sort of things that your campaign has been doing in order to, help out with the effort to deal with COVID and all the issues that come with it?
For us, the different activities, right? We are looking at, once again, it was the mutual aid work that's still going on strong and making sure that that is there, right? That is in place. Feeding people, one, that's step one. Testing people, step two. So for us, it's organizing weekly test and trace through various nonprofits that we do know. And the third right now is like we're in the middle of the vaccination, figuring out how to best guide people because of the rollout. So that's a struggle. I mean, tonight, Senator Biaggi and I are actually also hosting a fundraiser for an organization called Lovey the Bronx. And they have been doing, that's who I teamed up with early on last year to help provide food, PPE to families in need. So it's like you have a responsibility, right? Let me be very clear and very, very, very clear. I have a platform, right? It is my responsibility to use it for good, right? In whatever way I can. For me, it is making sure that my families have a home, have food on the table, and have means for a job, right? So if it means getting them into a position that they are most comfortable with, how do we get there, right? Making sure, like, send me your resume, I'll give you my criticisms, right? And we'll work on making it stronger for you. When I get lists of jobs, it's forwarding it to the right people and making sure that they understand these are the jobs that are available. It's just not one thing. Working with small businesses, this is what's available in the city, the state, the federal government. This is what's available in the private world, right? It's all of that. So COVID recovery, that's what it encompasses, and that's the work that we are doing, and we expect to continue it when we get elected, right? It's about making sure that the right programs are in place and making sure that they're properly funded and that there are ways to measure it, right? And then check and see the growth. At the end of the day, the best metric for me is seeing people back on the streets, ultimately all vaccinated without masks. And that is a dream, and a girl could dream, right? And it's going to take a lot to make it into a reality, but it's going to be a lot of teamwork, and we're here to do the work to do that teamwork.
I can be a cynic, or anybody else watching this can be a cynic and say that any effort by a candidate through their campaign is just to get elected. But given that it's still life or death with COVID-19, and there's still a lot of uncertainty, and there's still a lot of things that come with COVID-19, what does it say to you when you see campaign efforts become volunteer efforts to help combat what's going on?
You're talking to like the eternal optimist here. It tells you that people want to give back, right? I think that we could take it even as far, right? Because it's just been this week where last week we saw what a movement looks like with the labor strike at Hunts Point. We saw that folks from all across the city saw what was gross, right? Which were like owners trying to deny our essential workers, those on the front line, these folks who were literally helping feed us, being taken advantage of. And it was a slap on their faces to only offer those 30, 32 cents. It was a slap on their faces, right? And what we saw was that everyone said, nah, this isn't it. This is not right. And I've got your back. And I think it's what labor means, right? It's basically that solidarity. When we talk about solidarity, it's literally showing up. You saw folks showing up by sharing in social media. You saw folks showing up by creating a GoFundMe to feed the folks not only that were striking, but their supporters as well. You saw folks literally say enough is enough. And that's what we're going to have to do when we're going to have to like say that the labor movement needs more boots on the ground. It's actually us. It's on us to say, no, I can't shop there anymore because they're not holding these standards, right? Because at the end of the day, it's about the dignity and the respect that our workers deserve. And that's what's at stake here, right? And when you see that as a candidate, you see that and you know that you need to echo that not only now, not only yesterday, today, but tomorrow, right? It's what the labor movement brought us, right? It's the weekends, it's the 40-hour work week, those things, and that we thought that we fought already and those fights were done. No, these fights will never end, right? You have folks who are always going to try to take advantage of workers. And during a pandemic, it's egregious, right? And it's literally a slap across all our faces. So going back to your comment, yes, you see a lot of candidates and you see a lot of people putting themselves out there because there's still a fight that needs to be out there, right? There's still folks that we need to take care of and we need to protect. And those folks are our communities, right? These are the hard working men and women who have literally been taking us through this, right? Like getting us by. And that's why they're called frontline workers, because they're in the front line. And for us, they're essential. And we have to respect that and give them the dignity that they deserve. A dignity of having a clean home with no lead, a dignity of having an ability to have a small business, a dignity to have the best education. If we don't have that, if we can't do that, then what are we really doing? If we can't fight for them, then who are we really fighting for?
There's a lot of uphill battles, a lot of challenges facing the city council. Not only, you talk about, the losses of jobs, evictions, still combating COVID. And then you add on top of the $8 billion deficit that the city is facing. What are the things that you feel like the city since the start, since last year, that the city has gotten better at with, facing COVID facing these challenges within COVID? And what are some of the things that you feel like the city needs to get better at?
I think it took us by surprise, right? We weren't prepared for something this magnitude, right? Of this magnitude. And certainly we did not have the proper PPE for everyone. And so that was the first thing, right? The rollout of information, right? And where do we cast that blame? Because you had the WHO saying one thing, you had the federal administration saying another thing, and finding that information was the toughest challenge I think that the administration had. It's like, who do we really listen to? Which guidelines are the best guidelines? Because at the end of the day, we need to protect folks, right? That was the first thing. And I think that there were some real big challenges in that, the rollout of information as well, and making sure that we understood it, right? You and I are of almost the same age. So you remember also like what happened during HIV and all that, right? The stigmatisms that came out of that, the discrimination was very real. And we need to the city needed to make sure that also didn't happen, right? The discrimination part, that is. And so when we're looking at the rollout, making sure that the information was right. I think we're getting closer, obviously, now to understanding this with the mask use, with the social distance, with the washing of the hands, and encouraging folks to do that. I think has been great. I think the struggle still is today with the information for opening schools, and the closing of schools has been a challenge. I have been very loud about that. Also, when it comes to the opening and closing of small businesses, like our restaurants, I think that was really, really tough. And still to this day, it's super tough for my neighborhood, right? How do you justify Westchester and Long Island being open and in the city not? I literally live within 15 miles away from each side. And how do you justify that? I could easily go out to eat with friends in Bronxville. I could easily go out to eat with friends to Long Island, and I can't go across the street. And so that's where I think that we need to be better about, and holding the city and the state accountable, and creating better guidelines as we continue during this pandemic. When we're looking at uh, lessons learned, and the I told you so's would be kind of told you that our education system needed to be properly funded. We kind of told you that we needed to get better with our technology within our schools. You know, these are the issues I fought for back in 2017, and I'm still going to continue because we do not have equity, right? I had students in my district, high school students, get iPads, whereas I heard that in other parts of the city, students were getting MacBook Pros of the same age. Is that equity? Not really. So that's what I'm fighting for. It's like, let's be true about our equity. Let's be true about what we are doing. Let's be more intentional. And definitely let's involve more stakeholders, right? For me, the most learning that I've done has been listening to parents, has been listening to students and their challenges, right? And that's where we need to be when we're talking about serving our community. It's literally going to the ground first and seeing how it rolls up.
Talk to me about your platform. What are the things that I know you've mentioned a lot of the stuff that you're emphasizing, but just talk to me a little bit more. What are some other things that you feel like you haven't talked about, or you want to talk specifically about, and on your platform?
Certainly, COVID recovery. We've literally talked about it for most of the interview, but it's being meaningful with our recovery, and it is lessons learned, and also correcting what got us here in the first place. And that's, if we're going to be talking about COVID, let's do that now. Let's say, we really didn't fund this, and this is why it went so bad. Let's properly fund these programs. Let's make sure that these programs actually exist for this reason, and make sure that we're rolling it out, including everyone into this equation. When we're looking past that, right, building upon the COVID recovery, we also have to say that we're not doing enough for our small businesses. These challenges are very real. How are we being more intentional in our growth for our small businesses? You're telling me businesses that have been around for 40 years are forced to shut down? Nah, that's not good enough for me. That means that we did not do our best for our businesses. And it means going back into the books and making sure that we're looking at commercial rent control, right? We're looking at what means do we have to educate our business owners into opportunities. Also, looking at other ways to sustain our small businesses and bring them up to the 21st century, right? It shouldn't be that businesses that had access to technology were the only ones to survive. And that's the bad part, right? Like, they relied so much into the third party apps, right? The Grubhubs of that, and all these other food delivery apps, that if you didn't have that, then you didn't you definitely weren't sustained, right? And that's not great either, because we're also leaving out folks that live in a cash only world. So we needed to have that conversation, be very clear about how are we working not only within our communities, with our small businesses, but also with our banks, right? And having those real conversations, and talking about community banks, and understanding the the impact of having community banks that are really truly invested within our communities, and making sure that they expand.
In your personal experience, in your professional experience, what are the things that help you address these issues?
Look, I am an accountant, right? I literally worked with budgets, billion dollar budgets, right? And it was making sure that things function. And when I talk, I always talk about looking at things from a granular level, because that's where my background comes, right? It's looking at numbers and making sense of these numbers, and also going back to to what the numbers signify, right? These funding, when I'm funding programs, that dollar goes to a senior. That dollar goes to an after school program that means one child, right? Making sure that that dollar goes back to where it belongs, and it's not going to a donor's pocket, right? It's going to someone that I know that needs it, and that is my community. At the end of the day, funding should go back to our communities. I'm sick and tired of those games that are played. It literally needs to go and be meaningful. It's about being intentional with what our priorities are, right? So I'm unapologetically all about education, all about transportation, because I live basically in an area that's a transit desert, and it limits the opportunities for my community members to get jobs, and to just have influx of folks coming in and out, right? That traffic is crucial to helping my small businesses survive. And if I don't have that traffic, then there's a problem. And you know what? There's a problem. So we're going to fix it. And when we're looking at our small business expanding, we need to really take a meaningful approach to that.
So why would you say you're the best candidate for the 13th? Is it 13th, right?
13, lucky
Yeah,
13.
lucky
Um,
13.
because I've been here, right? I'm a product of the Bronx. I'm the daughter of the Bronx for a reason. I grew up during the 80s when the Bronx was burning, and I learned the valuable lesson of community and community engagement and community building each other up, right? I saw firsthand what that meant and what that looks like. I've also literally had a profession before running for office, right? It was being an accountant. It was understanding what makes a business not only survive but thrive, right? And part of that is implementing and using that knowledge and taking it to the city council and making sure that we're very intentional in how we're using our funds. And also, at the end of the day, it's leading with integrity and making sure that I'm representing a district that is so diverse, and making sure that each voice is heard. It makes involving people from different areas. I mean, look, I sit on the Municipal Services Committee, right? I'm the chair, and it's speaking to agencies and allowing the community to have a relationship and having the comfort to coming into our meetings and say, well, I have something to say about that. And it's literally giving them a voice, right? And it's that granular level. Back to the whole purpose of our campaign is everybody's at the table. Everyone has a voice, and feeling that comfort that, I don't have to have this paid access. No, you always have access. I'm here to represent you. It's on all of us. And having that strength and folks knowing me for that, it's crucial and it's key. Did you see, like, earlier when my cat was rubbing against the table and it moved me a little bit? Was that too much?
Yeah.
And like this man right here the whole time asking for pets. And I knew he was going to do it. I just knew it. But I didn't know he was going to ask for it the whole entire conversation. But yeah, because he needs attention, because obviously I don't give him enough.
Love cats. I'm allergic to cats. I can't mess with cats.
Oh, wait. So am I. So every morning.
What?
Yeah, no, I'm really bad.
Why? What are you doing to yourself?
I'm in love. Okay. They were rescues, and we've rescued them. So I'll take allergy medicine, which I still do every single morning because I can't breathe. And yeah, now it's been almost 9 years. On Cinco de Mayo, it's going to be 9 years that they'll be with us. And I wouldn't trade it for the world. These guys are my everything. They also came at a really tough point in my life where a couple of months into my rehabilitation for all my surgeries, and it was alone being home recovering, and they certainly like benefited from having me 24/7, and they helped me as much as I helped them. And so yeah, totally never going to give them up.
Just so last thing. So is there anything that you'd like to add to wait, hold on a second.
Sure.
Okay.
Liam!
We have a special guest. We have a
Hey,
special
bud!
guest. All right. Say hi to Marjorie.
Hi, buddy. Hi, Bobby. How are you? Okay, Bejo, God bless him. Oh, that hair. Oh my God. Please don't cut his hair.
Oh no, we're not.
Okay, good.
So is there anything that you'd like to add? We'll finish with.
Elections are coming June 22nd. It will be ranked choice vote. So I want to be everybody's number one. And believe in us as much as we believe in you, right? We came really close winning in 2017. Our fight is not done. And I appreciate any single amount of support anyone could do, which is sharing my social media, sharing our message, joining us in phone banking, or knocking on doors. Whatever works for y'all works for us. But please be engaged and join your local community board. Even if, you don't think you can do something politically, then do the most government thing that you can do and get involved is join your community board. That's the first step.
Marjorie Velazquez. Wait, where are you going? I'm not finished yet. Marjorie Velazquez, candidate for the City Council's 13th District. Thank you so much for taking the time out. Have a great candidacy. Have a great campaign. Good luck.
Thank you.
And let's do this again sometime.
Definitely when we win.
Yeah.
Duh. Okay. Thank you. Take care. Bye, Bobby. Bye, Liam.